I'm Matt Mahler with MovieWeb. It's a real pleasure to speak with you about this because it's an anniversary for a great franchise, but also kind of like such a big moment for you, I imagine. Um, the first film, how it sort of came together. Thinking about it now, it's so huge. But correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've read and discussed with David, and it seemed like a lost cause at times, or
Yeah.
like there was uncertainty until Fantastic Fest. Could you speak to that feeling at the time and how important it's been for you since then?
Yeah, I mean the movie was um, an independent film and fell apart a million times. The financing fell through. It was it almost didn't happen 100 times. So like that then we made the movie, which was hard and complicated and the never enough time, never enough money. Chad and Dave, first time directors, co-directing, like all the things. Keanu hadn't been in a movie in a while, and it was like, and just conceptually, it was a movie about, I would pitch it and I'm like, yeah, it's about a guy who kills his dog, and then, they'd be like, that sounds terrible. And so sort of like all in, and it was one of the first independent movies that, Basil and I had done at Thunder Road. It was really like the first independent movie, because he had been a studio-based producer prior to that, and I was his assistant. And so yeah, it was sort of like a Herculean effort to get the movie made. And then Post was its own beast. Like, the director's cut was like 2 hours and 12 minutes or something crazy. And it was a very different movie. And it took a long time to kind of find the rhythm of the movie and the right runtime, whereas it didn't feel where like the action didn't drag and it didn't feel, we shot of like, I was called like sad John Wick. He was like sort of moping around the house in the very blue aesthetic. It was like Norwegian noir. And so, and we had no distribution, and we screened the movie for buyers in Los Angeles, and most of the distributors walked out. And Lionsgate, took the bet on it. They had the international, so they took on the domestic, at very little risk. And in July, and put the movie out in October because, they didn't have a Saw that year. There was like a lot of decisions that were sort of, there wasn't time for long lead press. So it was just like kind of when we went to Fantastic Fest, the reaction was insane. It was like Harry Knowles was tweeting like, "This is what action movies should be like," and I think at that time, action was sort of in a little bit of a lull. Like it was a lot of kind of the same kind of movie. And when we came out, it was the long takes. It was just it had a style that people hadn't seen before. So yeah, there was no world where we sort of knew what we had. But then, the movie came out and it did modest box office, not insane, right? It didn't it was so this movie kept like finding audiences and had this crazy afterlife, especially in, home video and ancillaries. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we're making a sequel. And you're like, wait, well, I mean, this was a movie like I personally thought would have worked in like some of the, foreign territories, wasn't sure. Um, and so then it was like we had burnt the house down making the first one. We're like, wait, we're making a sequel? What do you do? There was no like clear through line of what the story could be. It wasn't like we were gonna go kill a cat or, we sort of didn't know. There's no IP. So it was like, what do we do? Which was fun. And then we sort of like were faced with, okay, what do we do next? And then Dave left. Dave went to go do Atomic Blonde. And so then we were sort of like making a movie again, but with Chad as the director, which was kind of its again like a whole new thing. So it's wild. I'm not sure I fully answered your question. Sorry,
Yeah,
I need
no,
caffeine today.
definitely.
But yes, I mean to say that like 10 years later, it is insane. It is not I know that a franchise is like one in a million. A franchise so beloved is one in a million. A franchise that continues to, outdo itself in box office and reviews and Rotten Tomato scores and like all of that is rarefied air that we get to play in. And so it's a huge coup, and it's fun to celebrate the wins because they're few and far between in the movie business.
Yeah. I love the Katharine Hepburn behind you, by the way. I just
Thank you.
noticed
It's
her.
my can poster from Sicario.
Nice. That's memorable. Yeah, and you mentioned sort of the action landscape being very different. And it's true. I mean, it's kind of an age of like maximalism and cinematic universes. There's not really a lead action star when you think of Expendables, Fast and Furious, MCU, DCU, but John Wick really localizes an action star. Uh, how will it persist now with the
The action
finale of John
genre.
Wick 4?
I mean, look, I think that like Wick works because, we didn't have a lot of money in the first movie also. So people were like, we were shooting in New York. Oh, you never do car chases. Well, yeah, we can't afford them. We can't outdo what Fast does. And so we stuck to our strengths, right? It was we have a star who can ride motorcycles and can drive and can do his own, stunt work and will train for 6 months before a movie. So all of those are our strengths. And not every movie has that. Not every star is willing to do that. So like those are our strengths. And so we play to them. I think my instinct is that, action movies will forever be working. And I think they're one of the few sort of genres that continues to travel and do well, and draw people to watch into the theaters. What the next step? There's always going to be superhero movies as well. I think it's so different from what we do. I think part of what audiences love the character of John Wick and what Keanu has brought to him is like you feel his pain. He feels real. Now the world is slightly heightened, um, but when he hurts, he hurts. And I think, and also rooted in the pain of, that dog dying in that moment and his wife leaving it to him. And I think that really resonated with people and is obviously still carrying us 4 movies later. But I don't think that, like, sure, MCU has characters that have had trauma or pain or overcoming something, but I think the spectacle of it is so different. That I don't think they compete with each other. They sort of are side by side and they'll probably both exist. But I think as movies are harder and harder to make and get more and more expensive, and there are less buyers, I think that naturally there'll be more sort of like single purpose action vehicles, I call them. Man on a mission, just because they're easier to make. And I think actors are interested in playing those roles. Where they can really sort of be grounded in a character and perhaps not wearing like, acting against a tennis ball and like on green screen in a suit. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'm curious. Uh, Obviously, you've said Ballerina will have a different vibe. It has a more feminine gaze to it. You've said that John is getting out and she is getting in.
Mhm.
Without that, there's still that pain at the source of it because it is still in the mold of a revenge film.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, Anna plays the character that is trying to, figure out what happened in her past, and searching for answers, which is slightly different than what, John Wick is trying to do. So the way in is different, but I think, yeah, I mean, it is also a revenge story to a degree. So
Yeah, I think, would you say he and her story is more future oriented and John's is more closure?
yeah, I mean, I think Anna is looking for closure as well, and looking for answers from her past. So I think that's certainly a part of it. But yes, I mean, John Wick is sort of working towards, I guess, more the future. They're both, I don't know, sorry, this is I'm trying to think through how to answer this question because there's like an inciting incident in Wick, and so he's just propelled, right? And more obstacles sort of come his way, and there's the high table, and like the worlds get bigger and the adversaries get larger. So to me, that is very sort of propulsive. I think Anna's character is trying to figure out what happened to her in the past, but then it thrusts her into the world, and then she's sort of moving towards the future.
Yeah.
That is
They
not super
were
articulate, but it's
no,
also
no,
like
it's good.
I'm like, how much can we say about Ballerina? It's so tricky,
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can say this, but they were so great going head to head and knock knock. Do they get a chance to go head to head in Ballerina?
they have scenes together. It's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be fantastic. Let me see here. Chad told the Hollywood Reporter last week, Chad Stahelski, referring to John Wick 4, and not like this expanded universe, but he said there's no topping what we did. That's the end. That's the deal. That's what we found closure for. Do you think, knowing these people, these creatives, this world, do you think things will stay that way? Do you want them to? Or is it only going to be this expanded universe?
Making these movies is so fun and rewarding and hard and um at the core of it has been a very small people that have worked on all four movies, right? I mean, Chad directed all four and we produced all four, and Keanu is obviously like integral to all of that. So it's again, like I said, rarefied air, and it is. I think I'm always hopeful we get the band back together because it's so it's such a rewarding experience, and we make movies that people really love, um, and have helped define a genre. So in my heart, I hope it's not over. Um, I think we have more stories to tell. Obviously, we have a very high standard, and the story has to be right, and the scenarios and everything. And Chad's likely going to do other stuff in between, and Keanu as well. And so the timing has to be right. It all has to sort of like come together in a way that makes sense. But I am hopeful that one day we can figure out what that movie is.
Mhm. And final question, speaking of timing and everyone having different projects, uh Sicario is such a huge thing with our readers for whatever reason. I mean, it's a brilliant film, and the second one is wonderful. Is there any news on a third one? What's sort of keeping it from progressing?
I mean, we're trying to figure out what, again, that storyline is that merits a third movie. I mean, we would love to make a third movie, and I think that the actors would like to come. I think we just have to figure out what the next chapter in that journey is. We're talking about it a lot, thinking about it and discussing it. Uh, I mean, I love those movies. Those are so close to my heart, and I think an amazing franchise. I mean, Denise set the bar really high, and all of our actors have gone on to do such amazing things, and Stefano. So and Taylor is like Taylor verse. So I think,
Yeah.
we have to figure out what makes sense to get that band back together. But
Yeah. If they're one person, it wouldn't work without, whether it's writer, director, actor.
that's a good question. I think the hope is to get all three actors back in a perfect world. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Whatever happens, I'm hopeful. Thank you so much for discussing this. Congrats on 10 years and everything else.
Yeah,
I
check back
appreciate it.
with me in 6 months. Hopefully I'll have some good updates for you.
Oh, fingers crossed. Thank you so much.